From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Another edition of the Wildcast podcast coming your way on Apple, Spotify, or the Wildcaster app. Justin Spears here with Arizona football insider Michael Lev. We are recording on this beautiful Monday afternoon after Arizona's 43-20 win over Colorado. Now the Wildcats got the top, was it number 15 ranked Oregon Ducks? Where's 12? Oregon ranked? Number 12. So Arizona's got their work cut out for them this week hosting the Oregon Ducks. But we'll talk more about that game later on in the week. Let's talk about what happened this past Saturday at Arizona Stadium, Lev. Arizona, they were favored to win by 17.5 points. They win by 23. So not only do the Wildcats win, but they won convincingly. Now, granted, it was against a terrible Colorado team. They just fired their head coach, Karl Dorrell, after their loss to Arizona over the weekend. But all things considered, Arizona's offense just hummed all night long. Jayden de Laura was spectacular. Another game with over 400 yards. Arizona had 400 yards just in the first half alone. They finished with 673. They finished with 43 points. They had a couple of receivers with over 160 yards. Tetairoa McMillan looking like the star wide receiver that Arizona brought in. I mean, he had a very nifty one-handed catch there towards the end of the first half. Defense, I'm not really going to say that, man, they really improved compared to the Cal game, because, again, I take the opponent with a grain of salt. It is Colorado. Arizona's defense is really going to be tested this week against Oregon. But altogether, I think it was a very sound game for the Arizona Wildcats. Lev, you had a chance to rewatch the game. What did you take away?
Well, we can just give our first thoughts here, Justin, because our initial analysis of the game on our post-game video went kaput.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Some technical difficulties. We apologize for that. There's some 15 minutes we'll never get back. But a fresh, clean slate here to talk about the Colorado game a little bit. Obviously, a great performance, not only by Jayden de Laura, but I thought the blocking was really sound, especially in two areas, pass blocking and perimeter blocking. Run blocking by the offensive line, I thought was just okay. There were couple situations where they just didn't get very much push. Most notable one, that goal to go situation there where Wiley didn't get in from the one. But I see great progress in terms of keeping Jayden de Laura clean, and that enables him to throw a little bit farther down the field. Some of those kind of later developing crossing routes that they're doing so much damage on. And the perimeter blocking, T-Mac's improved a lot in that area. T-E-Mac, Tanner McLachlan, has also been a difference maker in that regard. And that's how you turn some of these, kind of bubble screens into 15, 20-yard gains. You have to have that. It really wasn't very good last year at all. I'd watch the games and just be like, God, how can they just be so bad at this? And they've made great strides in that area. So I think that's big. Jayden is looking more comfortable in the offense every week, which is a big deal. His decision-making, I think, was very good. He's taking to coaching. Jed, you remember Jed said about those interceptions against Cal, you can't score 18 points on one play, right?
Yeah.
And I think he took that lesson to heart. He utilized his checkdowns against Colorado when he needed to. And hey, sometimes you only gain 4 or 5 yards, but it's a big difference having a 3rd and 5 versus a 3rd and 10.
Yeah.
Right? Or a turnover, the worst case scenario in those kind of situations. Defensively, I thought they were a lot better. Colorado obviously isn't very good. So a truer test lies ahead in Oregon, especially when it comes to run defense. But I just thought guys were in position much more so than the previous week. They were just kind of where they needed to be. Did they always make the play? No. But because of that, you didn't see those 70-yard plays. If a bad play might be 10 or 11 yards, you can live with that. What you can't live with is those total breakdowns that lead to those monster touchdowns that Cal was able to pull off.
Yeah. Jed Fish talked about the complementary football, the brand of football that they played. And also, there are layers to complementary football. And I think just on offense, Michael Wiley was very effective, had 2 passing touchdowns as well. When you can add that element to your game along with the wide receiver trio, also the tight end that they have, Jayden de Laura's got all sorts of options when it comes to the passing game. But also, they gave the ball a lot more to DJ Williams. Jonah Coleman got in on a couple of drives, and I just think overall it was probably – I know that, 673 yards, it's easy to say that it's Arizona's best game offensively, but I couldn't really point out too many flaws over the course of the game. But again, it was Colorado. But one thing I'd noticed, Lev, is Jacob Cowing, out of his 180 yards, 148 were after the catch. You also had Dorian Dinger finally getting into the end zone. He had probably his best game as an Arizona Wildcat. And then Tetero McMillan had a career high as well. Had all sorts of just very impressive plays. And, Lev, you pointed this out on Twitter that our friends at Athlon Sports projected the Arizona's Pac-12 group to be, was it 9th in the conference?
9th, yeah. They had, Athlon does positional rankings for every conference. And it's really cool. Sort of shows you where you're at, and they had Arizona's receiving core 9th in the league.
I don't know about
and
that.
I mean, look, we all make, as I said to someone on Twitter today, like none of us know anything in August. I'll be the first to admit, like my top 25 is trash beyond like the top 5. It's changing every single week as we learn more and more about these teams. But 9th, no way. I mean, this is definitely the top half, maybe the top 3. And there's a lot of versatility in that group. There's a lot of explosiveness, and you pick your poison. If you want to double team Jacob Cowing, go ahead, because they'll gladly throw to Dorian Dinger. They'll gladly throw to Tetero McMillan. They'll gladly throw to Tanner McLachlan, who's, that's the guy we didn't see coming. That's kind of the X factor. In this passing attack.
Hurdling people, too.
Hurdling people, breaking tackles. He's blocking well. A lot of production there. And he seems to have pretty good chemistry with Jayden de Laura as well. Jed and his staff have done a really good job of bringing in some high-level skill position players. Some of it is kind of by luck. Dorian Dinger, I mean, that was sort of good fortune. Some of it is, really hard work and recruiting, like T-Mac, who was committed to Oregon and decided to come here instead. But however they got it done, they have upgraded at those spots in a big way, and it was certainly evident against Colorado. It's been evident throughout the season, and we'll talk about this more in our next podcast, but can these guys do it against a team like the Oregon Ducks or the Washington Huskies who are coming up, or the USC Trojans, or, it's, the gauntlet, the murderer's row, whatever you want to call this upcoming stretch of almost everyone is ranked. Everyone has a winning record. You want to really find out where the program is at? You're going to find out over the next 6 games.
Real quick, Lev, this past weekend, I just mentioned that Carl Durrell got fired. He's got a nice little buyout of over $8 million. Paul Chryst at Wisconsin also got fired as well. A lot of midseason coaching changes. And when you add up all the buyout money for all these coaches combined between Scott Frost, Chryst, Carl Durrell, we're talking about over $67 million just in buyout money for these guys to not do their job.
Yeah. I always say the best job in the world is being an agent for a college football coach.
And Bobby Bonilla.
Or being Bobby Bonilla. Kind of the same thing. I think the trend now is to not wait. I mean, if you feel like this is a move that you're going to make eventually anyway, hit the ejection button.
Yeah.
And move on, and maybe get a look at an interim coach. I think Wisconsin is sort of a unique situation in that regard, and that Jim Leonard has long been discussed as a successor to Paul Chryst. But Colorado, like, what kind of coach do you think would fit in well there?
Eric Bieniemy.
I know Eric Bieniemy is the
Come
one
on,
that
let's do it.
Jumps to the top of the list, right? Because he doesn't seem to be able to get a serious look from the NFL. He obviously has been around one of the best coaches in the league for a long time, Andy Reid. He's a Colorado superstar back in the day. It makes a lot of sense. I saw an interesting name that Bruce Feldman put out there from The Athletic, Ryan Walters, who is the defensive coordinator at Illinois. Illinois is having a really good year this year. Their victory over Wisconsin kind of led to Paul Chryst being fired. Ryan Walters played for Colorado from 2004 to 8. He is a native of Colorado, young coach. He's in his 30s.
I like that.
It makes some sense. I feel like that job is, maybe that's kind of a program builder type job, not unlike Kansas.
Yeah.
Let's say where Lance Leipold has gone in there and turned them around. They've got game day coming. He's connected to Wisconsin. He's connected to Nebraska. He's kind of the coach everybody wants. I see Colorado in that same kind of mold.
Well, what went wrong for Colorado? Because when Carl Dorrell first got there, I didn't like the hire. I didn't understand why they went with the Carl Dorrell route. But then they started to kind of pick up steam in recruitment. Like they got Jason Harris to go to Colorado over Arizona initially. And this is the Harris family. Both mom and dad played sports at the U of A. Brother is currently at Arizona, and Jason Harris went to Colorado. I'm trying to figure out
who recruited Jason Harris?
Wasn't it
Mel Tucker?
Mel Tucker. Oh, that's right.
So then what happened? Mel Tucker
State.
left in the spring, which is weird.
Yeah.
Weird timing. The problem they had, the biggest problem they had, is like retention. They couldn't keep guys. You need to create a culture where guys want to stay.
Yeah.
Not only come to your school, but stay at your school. And they, we mentioned this last week. They lost a ton of guys in the portal. I mean, you think Arizona would have thrown for 500 yards if Mekhi Blackman and Christian Gonzalez were still at Colorado?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? That makes a huge difference. That's number one. And number two, when you can't figure out quarterback, that's a problem.
Yep.
And Wisconsin has kind of had that issue, right? Nebraska, they've gone through a lot of guys. ASU lost their quarterback in the offseason. That's a common thread with a lot of these jobs or these programs where things aren't going well and there's a midseason coaching change. Arizona seems to have landed on a good solution here with Jaden DeLora, who's playing really well. But those would be the two biggest factors that I would cite: is losing personnel in the portal and then not being able to figure out quarterback.
A lot of coaching changes.
A lot.
Should be fascinating.
I think it's like every week now.
Yeah.
Right? Every Sunday. And then we had two this past Sunday. So.
And it's October 3rd at the time that we're recording this podcast.
Yeah, see, that is that's the point. It's not even mid-season yet, right? It's still early season.
Yeah.
And we've had, 4 or 5? Georgia Tech, Arizona State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Colorado?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the mailbag for this week. Lev, we got a lot of questions this week.
Okay, let's go.
Appreciate all of you. Once again, we can't thank you enough for participating in this mailbag. Lev and I have a fun time discussing these questions. First up on the docket, Gilbert Rodriguez. Gilbert is asking, is Arizona going to continue to work on the defense? Will they continue to work on fundamentals? Oregon will be a tough test for our defense. Very, very true, my man Gilbert. Bo Nix and that offense that they have, it's going to be a huge test. Oregon's going to run all over Arizona. Like, I can go ahead and guarantee it now. We're going to be talking about Arizona probably surrendering at least 200 yards on the ground.
I was going to say,
Ducks.
like, if you come out of that game allowing less than 200 yards, you might have a pretty good chance of winning. As to his specific question, absolutely, they're going to keep working on it. I think this idea of adding a second period of tackling drills and practice is probably something they're going to stick with for the rest of the season. Jed talked about this a little bit last week. This kind of like the balance during the season of how much do you work on fundamentals versus how much do you work on game plan. And he admitted, like, sometimes coaches get away from the fundamentals too much. Like he talked about, how do you defend this particular play? sometimes it's more getting off blocks, and having your eyes in the right place, footwork, hand usage versus being in the right defense for that particular call. So always a tricky balance, and I think they learned a valuable lesson.
Yep.
Kind of getting away from that a little bit, and major breakdowns against Cal, and hopefully we won't see anything like that again for the rest of the season.
John Davis asks, why isn't Jamari Joyner playing much since he's a great talent? Is it because our wide receiver core is doing great, or is it health reasons? I think it's the former more than the latter. I know that his health is definitely been wishy-washy over the last couple of years dealing with those foot injuries, but I think that Jed Fish likes to keep it old school, or by old school I mean very NFL style, where they don't really like to go too much into their bench. That's why we haven't seen too much of Kevin Green. Anthony Simpson, who got the number 1 jersey, I mean, he's been kind of MIA in terms of the offense, and we thought he was going to have a huge role for Arizona this year. So I think it's just more so that the coaching staff really just wants to stick with their 3 guys, Cowing, T-Mac, and Dorian Dinger. And then if those guys get hurt, then the next man up mentality. I think Jamari is a very solid wide receiver. He would play at a lot of places in the conference. But I think with what they have right now, I think it's more so just because of the talent that's in front of him.
Yeah, I agree. They have used him a handful of times as a Wildcat quarterback, and I wouldn't mind seeing that near the goal line. They haven't used him in that particular scenario. No, they did kind of
They could have used it this
jump,
past weekend.
They did that jump pass that T-Mac caught in the back of the end zone. He got shoved out. I would love to see a Wildcat play where Jamari kind of fakes like he's going to run, pulls up, throws a little jump pass to maybe Tanner or someone slipping out of the backfield.
When they got stopped on the goal line against Colorado.
Yeah, they got stopped. Useful. I mean, so, it's really hard to run straight up the middle against anybody. I was a little surprised they didn't put in Jonah or DJ Williams in there, because those guys are maybe a little bit better between the tackles. Michael Wiley is kind of a slasher, pretty good player in space. Those guys didn't get a lot of run until late in the game, but man, they both look good.
Yeah,
DJ and Jonah breaking a lot of tackles, a lot of tackle breaking. Colorado needs to go back to basics, man.
They work on a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay.
DW Lee 200 says, impressed with Max Brown's color commentary in last night's Pac-12 network game. Very prepared and knowledgeable. Who in the media, print, TV, etc., do you consider to be top-notch? For me, always look forward to Michael Lev's Sunday 5 takeaways. There you go, Lev.
That's very kind. I would love to take that thing to the next level and have video clips in there, but time /
or like John Madden, where
technology.
You're
Yeah, sure. That would be great. If I had more time and I had more technical skill, maybe we could pull that off. But really appreciate that. I like, if I can learn something that I didn't know before, and I think there's a lot of promising young analysts who teach me something about the game. I think Chris Collinsworth still does sometimes, because he focuses so much on the line play. But kind of up-and-comers in the business, I'll throw out Mark Sanchez, whom I covered at USC. And I knew the first time I ever talked to him that he was just a natural. Very good with the media. I think he's got good analytical skills, good sense of humor. He's just kind of in the sweet spot of his career to really rise in the business.
I just thought of a Mark Sanchez quote from 2 weeks ago. He was color commentator for an NFL game, and he said he cleared him out faster than a teenager's search history. Which I thought was
tremendous,
so
tremendous, right? What a great
fantastic line. All right, moving on to the next one. At UA Catmandu, he asks, best trio of quarterback, running back, receiver.
Yeah, this is a hard one.
You got UCLA with DTR and Bobo, and who's their
Zach,
running back?
Charbonnet.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet. USC, obviously Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, Jordan Addison. Washington, they got Penix, Tual Papa Odunze. Oregon, they have Bo Nix. Is it James Cota or who's Cota? What's his first name? Coda, that's all I know. And then Irving, Utah, with Cameron Rising, Bernard, and Vele. And then, of course, you got Arizona with Jaden Delora, Michael Wiley, and Jacob Cowing. Arizona's up there. I'm willing to bet they're maybe top 3 in the conference, maybe top 4, because we are including running backs here. But Michael Wiley's been awesome. He's been spectacular this year. So Arizona's definitely towards the top, but I'll probably give the nod still to USC's trio: Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, and Jordan Addison. Those guys are next level pro players. I think Arizona's guys can get to that level, but I look at USC's trio; those are bona fide pros.
I am with you on this one. I don't see how you could go in any other direction besides USC. I mean, Jordan Addison and Travis Dye have incredibly impressive resumes. So I'm that, and then you add just the talent that Caleb Williams has. I know he's really young still in his career, but I think his ceiling is really high. Like NFL top 5 draft pick kind of high. What's interesting about Oregon is, it's not like they have a bunch of flashy skill position players. Troy Franklin, very good. He's not getting the kind of headlines or pub that Jordan Addison gets or Jacob Cowing is getting now. Chase Cota, that's who you're talking about before. And Bo Nix has had some spectacular moments, has been kind of up and down. They've had a bunch of different guys who've run the ball well for them. I think where they've been able to separate themselves a little bit from some of the other teams in the Pac-12 is defensive recruiting and offensive line development, kind of like Utah in that regard. I think that's what's going to be noticeably different about them when Arizona faces them on Saturday, is how many dudes they've got on the defensive side of the ball.
AZ Cat John asks, best coached position group. Who is it?
Oof, wow,
tough question.
That's a tough one. That is a really tough one.
I might have to go safeties here. Honestly, we're talking about just Arizona now. Kevin Cummings. It's easy to say that he's the best position coach because of what the receivers are doing, but I compare this year to last year and how Jackson Turner and Christian Young have really molded into their roles. Jackson Turner already has a couple of takeaways this year. Christian Young, while he had a couple of plays that could have been ruled targeting last week against Colorado, he was all over the field. So I think the job that Chuck Cecil has done with guys like Christian Young and Jackson Turner, I think is worth noting. And so I'm going to go Chuck Cecil in his safeties group as the best position group so far.
People would not have said that last year.
No kidding.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
You could make a case for cornerback. I think Dwayne Walker is an excellent defensive backs coach who easily could be the coordinator of this team or any number of teams across the country. You could make a case for running back. I think.
Yeah.
Now Scotty Graham doesn't have a lot of experience. Doesn't necessarily have the resume that some of these other people do. But knock wood, they don't fumble.
Yeah.
And then you see all the running backs utilizing their weapons. The stiff arm, the ability to shed and break tackles, catching out of the backfield, blocking. Not a ton of breakdowns there. Mm-hmm. That's another one that I would cite. And then, kudos to Jimmy Doherty too for aiding Jaden Delora in this transition that he's made from a completely different system and style, and he's becoming a more well-rounded quarterback right before our eyes.
Brad Malone at Bear Down Bias. Shout out to Brad. Always appreciate him. He asked, I'm a fan of El Minuto and Minidito. Where's your go-to Mexican food spot in town? Because in the tweet that I sent out, I'm like, hey, Pac-12 football questions, Arizona football questions, food questions, and we got a few food
Here
questions.
We go. Food questions.
Brad asked, where's your go-to Mexican food spot in town? Brad said it right there, Minidito. Now, the key is kind of like the hack to Minidito is that it's so popular and it's such a small place that you have to go between lunch and dinner. So you have to go kind of like at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you avoid the lunch rush at noon and then, of course, the evening rush. So 2 to 3 o'clock at Minidito, you'll definitely be having a great meal.
There are a lot of places I like. There's one right near where we are right now, Tanya's 33, nearish downtown. That is excellent. I like Sace a lot. There's a couple locations. There's one at the Mercado. There's one up north. Tacos Apson is a really good sort of old school street taco, genuine kind of place. There's one on the south side. There's one up on the northwest side. El Güero Canelo, of course, if you want a Sonoran dog, and they have other good stuff as well. Caramelos there are excellent as well. There are a lot of good places around Tucson that I like. And now that we're talking about this, Justin, I'm kind of getting hungry, right?
It is lunchtime. What is the best concession stand item you've ever had? Asked Sarah Gazelle.
Oof, that's really tough. It's hard to narrow it down, but I will say, like, I think it's called Guaranteed Rate Field now, where the White Sox play.
Yeah.
Used to be other things, Comiskey Park, way back in the day. But they'll do a bratwurst on the grill with like sauerkraut and grilled onions. That's like, you go to a ball game. Yeah, that's the kind of food that I like, and then that I would want, and that was the one that jumped to mind for me.
I'm probably going to go staying close to home, Sonoran hot dog at Arizona Stadium, because you can't get that anywhere else. Like Sonoran hot dogs at baseball games, other sporting events, you only get it at Arizona Stadium.
Yeah,
man.
when I mentioned this I was on some podcast in Mississippi before the Mississippi State game, and they were asking me about local fare, and I mentioned Sonoran hot dogs, and they had no idea what that even was.
Yeah.
So hey, if you're coming in from out of town, you want to check out local cuisine, have yourself a Sonoran dog. You can get those from at the stadium. You can get those at Güero Canelo, as I mentioned. You can get those at BK's. Among other places.
All right, let's see. Do we have any other food questions? Oh, my gosh, yes. JJ Salinas asked, have you ever had red enchiladas stacked with an over-easy egg on top?
Yes, I have.
The answer is yes to me.
Yes, I have.
When you got family in New Mexico, you get down.
Yeah, that's New Mexican food. I think the first time I had that was when I covered the New Mexico Bowl in December 2015, my first week on the job. Arizona played in Albuquerque, and that was absolutely delightful. You can get that at Poco and Mom's here in town, right? That's the way to go. I kind of like a fried egg on top of just about anything on a burger. Mm-hmm. Just that's an enhancement to any food.
Same with bacon. All right, let's go back to
you could do both.
Ooh, fried egg and bacon.
Right.
Really crazy. All right, let's go back to some football questions here. Gordon McPherson asked, Pac-12 question. How is it all logical for Arizona, a basketball school, to remain in the Pac-10, which will be the worst Power 5 hoops conference in the nation without the LA schools? If the money from the Big 12, the best basketball conference in the country, offers similar money? It's a great question.
Man, it's a complicated question. You go first, Justin.
I'm all for the Big 12, to be honest with you. I've been a Big 12 guy all along. I think that if you're a school like Arizona, you have to think about basketball sense. Arizona can also compete in the Big 12 in football. This is a conference where Arizona can kind of be at the top of the league, or at least compete for a league championship. So if you're thinking about conference realignment, and if you're thinking about abandoning the Pac-12, the only option right now is the Big 12. And hey, you don't get Arizona UCLA twice a year. But think about the number of primetime matchups between Arizona Kansas, Arizona Baylor, Arizona Texas Tech. Like, basketball sense, this is awesome for Arizona. They don't need UCLA. Now, they can maybe do like a home and home series every few years with UCLA to kind of keep up the rivalry, kind of like the way Arizona has been with Gonzaga over the last few years. But I think that for a basketball sense, it definitely makes sense to go to the Big 12. And I've always said that from the get-go.
It's a really good question, and I appreciate the question. However, no one looks at these things through the lens of basketball, right? Football. It's all about football. Football is the biggest driver of revenue, TV ratings, etc. So basketball kind of gets shoved to the side. What would the league be like if it just remained the Pac-10. Obviously not as high profile. Arizona would dominate in basketball and win the league championship at least every other year. If you added San Diego State to the mix, they've had a pretty good program, certainly not on the level of UCLA. UNLV, if they were to join in the past, they've had a really good basketball program. But man, if you put the four corner schools in the current, or what the Big 12 is going to be, you're also adding Cincinnati and Houston to the mix, and BYU. I mean, that is a tremendous basketball conference. And it would also be a really good baseball conference. Like, the Big 12 is already excellent at baseball. I'm a big baseball guy. It'd be a really good softball conference as well. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel like that's going to happen right now. If I had to bet, I would bet that the Pac stays together. But then again, no one saw it coming when John Wilner reported that USC and UCLA were leaving, right? Yeah. It just kind of happens, and Oregon, Washington, it feels like they've kind of got wandering eyes. They're just kind of waiting for the Big Ten to slip into their DMs.
I'm thinking about that meme. The guy where he's walking with his girlfriend on the street, and he's turning around looking at the other one.
Perfect.
All right, Sammy Ross asks, huge week in the Pac. Separation Saturday. Cats open up as a 10-point dog versus a top 15 team, which I believe now is at 13.5.
Yeah.
So the line's going up. And he says, wow, and congrats to Fish and company. How close we get to a sellout? I think 6 p.m. game against Oregon.
I think very close. If ever it's going to happen, right?
I think we're talking about reaching 50,000, close to it. 48,000, I would say, is probably a good number to start
I think Oregon will travel a little bit down here. I think the fans are going to turn out in a major way for this one. Oregon is just they're one of the sexiest opponents, right? Going in the and it's also family weekend, right? So a lot more people are just going to be in town in general than would have been otherwise. I think we might get there.
Hide the paraphernalia, kids. Parents are coming. M. Paz says, what are the keys to a Zona upset? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we mentioned
stopping the run.
Stopping the run is a big one. I think that the crowd can really help. They're going to need like a super energized electric atmosphere. Maybe there's a couple false start penalties that happen against Oregon, and they get backed up and put into some uncomfortable situations. I think if Bad Bo Nix shows up, that would be really helpful. In all likelihood, you're going to have to win a shootout.
Yeah.
The way that Arizona's offense has looked so far, I think they're capable of winning that type of game. Defense hasn't been great, and you're just gonna have to get a couple stops, win the turnover battle, keep mistakes to a minimum. It's gonna be really tough. But having the game here in Tucson should help. And I think as you look at this upcoming, murderer's row of 6 games, that this might be the best opportunity.
Yeah,
team's relatively healthy. Games at home should be a big crowd. Oregon's very good, but they've also shown some vulnerabilities too. I mean, they really should have lost that game at Washington State.
Yeah.
Washington State kind of gave that one away. So, I don't think it's insane. And there's also some history, right, of Oregon being a ranked team and losing to Arizona.
Yep. Go back to 2007. They came in as the number 2 ranked team in the country. Now, granted, Dennis Dixon did go down with an ACL injury. 2013, Oregon, once again, a top 5 team. Arizona just punched them in the face. Kadeem Carey was running like crazy. The defense was very impressive. They went up there and beat the Wildcats in Eugene. So it has been done before. But I think, if you're an Arizona fan, if you want to feel comfortable about your team going into this game, because it's going to be, again, top 15 opponent, this is probably the toughest team that Arizona has faced all year long. But Arizona, they were right there going into the fourth quarter against Mississippi State. Against Cal, that was kind of a shootout game, but it got away from them in the third quarter because they kind of abandoned the run game. I think that Arizona's coaching staff, the players have kind of learned from past mistakes, and I think they'll have a game plan in place. But man, Oregon's just such a tough team. And what is the combined record of Arizona's next
6 opponents.
Yeah.
26-4.
26-4. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So
and
it's a tough break for Arizona.
Yeah, I will add that 2 of those losses were games in which those teams played each other, right? UCLA defeated Washington, Oregon defeated Washington State. So that's 2 of the losses right there. The other ones came against Utah, lost at Florida by a field goal, and then of course Oregon got blown out against Georgia in the first game of the season. But yeah, 5 of the teams are ranked currently. They all have winning records. Half the games are on the road. It's going to be a really, really difficult upcoming stretch here for the Arizona Wildcats.
Well, and I'll end it on this. Bear Down Beat MM says, I don't see a clear path ahead. My focus is on Arizona State. Can we beat them this year? Absolutely.
Yes, you can. But you want to go into that game healthy, and you want to go into that game confident. And hey, if you can pull off 2 upsets along the way, then you're playing for a bowl eligibility in that game against ASU. So to me, that's kind of the realistic goal of this 6-game stretch, is if you can go 2-4. I know that's probably not what anyone wants to hear. I'm sure they're not talking that way inside the Lowell Stevens football facility. But like I said, being realistic, where the team was last year, you could pull off a couple upsets, go into the ASU game seeking a bowl bid. That would be an overwhelmingly, indisputably successful second season for Jedd Fisch.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Make sure you follow Michael Lev on Twitter at Michael J. Lev. You can follow me at Justin E. Sports. And don't forget to like and follow the Wildcaster on all social media platforms. Subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast. If you're an Apple Podcast user, please give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about our podcast. We love doing these twice a week. We'll be back later on in the week to preview Arizona versus Oregon at Arizona Stadium with sports editor Ryan Finley. And as always, don't forget to subscribe online on Tucson.com and download the Wildcaster app for free today.